and is aware that the recording is taking place. I don't believe it records the chat function when we're all done, but the intent is once we have completed all of these trainings, we'll put the recordings on our website so that if any of those of you here today that attended our sessions on Tuesday, if you wanted to review it again, or for people who weren't able to join us, you'll be able to do so at that time. So I'm just going to go through. I hope that you can see my dashboard. I hope it is similar to what you all see when you log into our MNSAS system. We reached out maybe a month or so ago when we started talking about planning for these trainings, and thank you to those of you who responded with your questions, comments, and suggestions for what you wanted us to review today. As Betsy mentioned, we're going to monitor the chat. Please feel free to unmute yourself and stop us at any point as we go through this process. We want to make sure it's as useful to you as possible. So any question that you have, for sure somebody else has had the same question. So please stop us or put your questions in the chat. Or if anything comes up after today, just email Betsy and I, and we'll be sure to respond and or include it in our future trainings. Hey. So most of the beeps have stopped. So I'm just going to start going through the dashboard here. So this dashboard, again, should look very similar to what you see when you log in. It's going to say, welcome, whoever's logging in for your institution and the name of your school. At the top, it's going to show your application status. So my application is currently approved. So I have this green little approved box. This green change link, we have some institutions that have institutional contacts that are contacts for multiple schools. So when I set up my test schools, I'm a contact for multiple schools. And so if you're one of those individuals that is a contact for one and for another one, specifically, I'm thinking like the College of St. Ben's and St. John's University. Often those institutions have the same people in dual roles. You can come in here, click this green change button, and it will allow you to switch to whatever school you want to be in. And then you just scroll down to the bottom, click Save Changes, and it'll either keep you in the same institution or move you to the other institution that you want to keep working in. Not everybody has that. You will only have it if you are a contact for multiple institutions. Okay, so then what I want to do, say I'm going to start my renewal application and I want to get going and make sure all the requirements are complete and submitted. So you'll see this sentence here in this gray shaded box. Once you've completed all the requirements below, click the button to submit the application. This application button is going to remain grayed out until each of the sections are complete. And so we're going to show you that, but we get a lot of questions like, I'm done, but I can't submit, I can't hit the submit button. And sometimes it truly is a glitch, and please reach out to us. And sometimes I'll show you what might be happening as well. So you always want to start in the requirements screen. First thing to keep note of, so I'm in an application that's already been approved as indicated here at the top. So what I'm going to look at is this first line here will indicate what application you're in. So I'm in my initial application that expired on September 30th, 2023. So as you complete applications each year, this dropdown is going to include all of those. So you can go back and look at your applications from prior years if you want to, and select them from the dropdown. Since I only have my initial, that's the only one that's available. But now I need to do my next one. I need to do a renewal application for this next upcoming term, or excuse me, upcoming year 2024. So what I want to do is click on this box that says new registration renewal, and it's going to open up the new institutional renewal application. Some of the information will already autofill, and some of it you'll have to enter. So what we would ask you to do is just make sure you take some time to go through, maybe a phone number has changed, or make sure the web address is correct. Mailing addresses or administrative offices, you can make changes to any of those while you're in this section. I'm not going to change anything just because to make it go a little faster. But so we'll just add a few things here. Essentially what I'm doing is just want to make sure I go through, update anything that needs to be updated, click Save Changes at the bottom. So you always want to make sure you scroll to the very bottom of the page where you'll get that indicator to save your changes, and it'll redirect you back to the dashboard. So from there, I can see I've completed one of these tiles that need to be complete within the institution section. So I am just kind of go through and review each page, making sure I answer questions. Here you can, in these sections, you can either include your URL or a link to the documentation, or you can upload them directly to MNSAS. Essentially what you're doing is making sure that you go through each tile of the application. The applications, you'll know that you've reviewed them when they turn green. So you can see I've done the first two here. You won't actually be able to submit anything until each of them are green. They can't be red or nothing will update. So the media and advertising piece, that's the piece that I look at most. We have included information here that these are just primary samples or templates of your media and advertising you can upload here. We do already automatically review like your website, any social media site, so you don't have to provide any of that documentation. You can put your catalog link here or upload your catalog. There's some questions about checklist items that we'd ask you to put the page number listed, or if it's a link, just we'll use the link. So hopefully what you're finding is it's pretty self-explanatory and easy to get through the application. So for the student record retention plan, you either have an arrangement with another institution, or you can have an arrangement with the office. If you check yes that you have an arrangement with another institution, you'll add their information. We'll ask you to upload a copy of the student record retention plan as well. If you say no, that the application will walk you through uploading information regarding the records bond. Within the affidavit piece, we ask you to upload a copy of the affidavit, and then you'll get a notification to also mail the affidavit to our office so that we have a hard copy on file as well. The certification for criteria, they're really just asking you to whoever's completing the application to include your name in each of these sections, attesting to the requirements of the registration statute. Okay, so now it's going to redirect me back to the dashboard, and what I should find is I've completed all of the requirements for this initial institution piece. What I'll do then next is review the other application sections. So the accreditation piece, they're all going to come in as incomplete, as you'll see on the renewal, and it's up to you then to indicate when it's complete. So if I have updated information for accreditation, if I need to add a new accreditation that's occurred within the last year, I'll click on this Add New Accreditation. If I don't have any changes, I'll mark this section complete. Financials. So the financials piece, what you'll notice is, I'm just going to skip the financial section just to show you something within the contacts. So the financial section is specifically set up to enable just the financial contact representatives to have access to this section. So we do get a lot of questions from institutional representatives saying, I'm trying to complete the application, but I don't have anything in the financials piece. And you won't have anything in the financial piece unless you're the financial contact. So you'll see I'm logged in, I'm the financial, the president, the primary, and the secondary. Bella, who's my dog, she's also a financial representative. So if she were helping me with the application, she'd be able to complete the financial section as well. But if you're in here as a secondary contact, many institutions have administrative staff or other staff assisting them with these applications for the security of your institution's very private financial information. You tell us who has access to that financial piece by indicating they're the financial contact. So I have financials approved from the last year, so it'll show that. To do the financials, I just click on add new financials, answer the questions. Here I would upload the documents requested, hit submit. And one really important piece that is very easy to forget is to make sure that you mark the section as complete. So even though I've already uploaded this, the section is still red and complete and will not let me green or get this application submitted. So I always have to remember to hit this each section until they're green complete. Then within the contact section, I want to review these contacts. So anyone who is currently in the president role or the primary role can make edits to the contacts. So Bella couldn't log in and delete me as a contact or anybody else. She's just the financial contact. So really in this institution, I'm the only one that can do that. So if you are the president or the primary and you want to add a contact, you click on this link. If you want to edit a contact, click over here. If you want to delete a contact, you delete them with the little red garbage can. We have heard oftentimes from institutions who the primary contact is no longer at your institution, so they can't make changes for you. In the event that that happens, please email me and I can help to take care of that for you. So no worries about that. But what I'm doing now then, these still look like good contacts. So again, I got to mark it green complete so I can move on. The next one I want to look at are my locations. And so locations and programs are connected. And so what I want to do is open up my location that's still active. And I want to scroll all the way to the bottom and make sure the program is indicated and checked here. If this box isn't checked, it's not going to show up on your approval letter for that location. We have lots of institutions that have lots of programs with lots of different locations. And the quickest way for you to make sure that it shows accurately on your approval letter is to go through your locations. Excuse me. And make sure that you've indicated and identified which programs are going to be offered at those locations.
And I'm going to cut in right here because I'm going to make a plea to my institutions to please make this change through the location document and not individually through each individual program. It takes me a long time to get through the programs through 5 queues. It takes up to 45 seconds every time I have to move it through the approval process. It's so much nicer to do it through each one location for 45 programs, not the 45 programs individually. And if you're going in and editing your programs for any reason, I'm going to ask you to fill out the credit specialization chart. And you don't have to do that if you do it through your location. So it's just, if you're going to be in there, make the update that we couldn't transfer any of the credit information from the old database to the new based on how the old database was structured. So we have to manually get that back in, and you can avoid it or push it down the road if you do it through the location document instead of the program document.
Great. So one thing I wanted to point out, anytime you're making an edit to your locations or your programs or accreditation, I believe, when you make an edit, you're going to notice there are 2 created. excuse me. So when I started this application, I have my approved test location number 1. And then I went in there to double check this was submitted. It's now in as a draft. So if I made some changes, say I had to change the address, or I changed it from a auxiliary campus to a branch campus, or the phone number or something, and I submit that then to OHE, there's always going to be 2. And those 2 then will be merged once Betsy reviews it and assesses it. Then the old information will be inactivated, and the new updates that you've made will then become the document of record. So I'm all done with my locations. Want to make sure to mark complete. So now I'm almost done. And I want to review my programs. So again, my program is just a test institution, so I just have the 1 program. If I needed to add more programs, I could click here. If I don't, I can click Mark Complete. One thing I think we covered on Tuesday's training session is when you are adding a program, the question that you get first is this application for a new program you're seeking an exemption for. And Betsy, is it correct? We always want you to say yes.
Yes, default to the yes. Please don't answer no unless you know it is not exempt. Mostly because this will trigger a lot of skip logic if you select any of these boxes. And that helps me evaluate whether it's subject to full review or fees. So many institutions have been opting out of the skip logic to the point where if you think it's not supposed to be exempt, I may just charge you the fee and go through the full review process because I'm having to like backtrack things multiple times, which is not the purpose, because the purpose is to get you guys to engage. And so always mark yes until you know. Kate, can you scroll down just a little bit?
You bet.
And then until you know A through E, you have no check marks, then you can hit no. Until you get comfortable with what A and E are, and that will kind of help you determine whether you ever need to start hitting yes, is once you start getting really comfortable with what those exemptions are for, to allow you to fill out less of the application. And the skip logic will open up or close down some of the questions based on your answers. And the goal is, again, to make your upload and your process faster, but also for me to be able to review and to make that determination if this is subject to a fee or not, and subject to full review based on these types of exemptions. So I'm really looking forward to people. I've already seen some of the changes from our first training 2 days ago, and people are starting to engage with that skip logic, and I appreciate that. So thank you.
Okay, so for example, say I do need to add a new program. I'm going to first see if they qualify for an exemption, but gosh, I don't have all the information that I need to fill out the application. So what I want to do then, instead of hitting submit, I'm going to save it as a draft. So we got a few questions from institutional representatives saying, I don't understand when we click submit or when we save it as a draft. Essentially, if you're not done with the application, you don't want to kick it to OHE for review yet, but you don't want to lose out on the work that you've already put into it. Click it as save as a draft. Then you can go back in and continue to edit it when you have the information that you need to complete the application. So for programs, once it saves, and one thing that Betsy and I especially are getting much better at is patience. So on our side, MNSAS is quite slow. So sometimes we'll be working in it and it'll just time out. Sometimes it'll do what it's just doing now. It's saying it's saving and it never gets back and we have to get out and log back in. Or it usually takes, I think it's about 45 seconds or so for the system to update itself. So if you're working on something, you think you've submitted it or you've uploaded a document, but you don't see it right away, maybe give it a couple minutes and hopefully it'll actually be there. So I probably just broke MNSAS. See, guys, now it's just saving. Yes, patience is not my favorite thing. Do we have any questions from anybody while we wait to see if this redirects itself? Otherwise, I'll get out and log back in. But if anybody has questions, or I don't know if there's anything in the chat, Betsy, that we need to address.
Sure. So there's some questions about uploading syllabi. Even if you have HLC accreditation, you have the syllabi, it is just really helpful for me, one, to make sure that the assessment level is correct. Or having, there is one institution that really is helpful. I think there's several. They'll upload in the course descriptions question like, this course is new, this course is not new. In the course description is kind of a table. So they'll have the course title, the course number, the course name, and the course description, and then a little like a statement of whether the course was new or not. If you're doing something like that and you're going through and kind of creating something specifically for me, then you don't need to upload the syllabi. But if you don't want to create something like that, like a key for me saying this is specific, this is really does apply directly more to the programs that are certificate programs and they're included in part of a degree program. That helps me get through that verification of the assessment faster. Otherwise, with new programs, having the syllabi just helps us kind of check certain check marks for the program. They are very useful to have. And it's also kind of an issue that I use syllabi, and you guys get wrapped into this, is how I address diploma mills. Typically, diploma mills don't have course syllabi that they can provide me. And so I treat all institutions the same. And I do that by having you submit them because I have them submit them. So I'm not like targeting you as a diploma mill. I'm saying every institution provides these. They're extremely helpful, even for exempt programs, because typically these diploma mills are applying for exemptions. And that helps me validate that you have administrative capability for these programs, which is not just an issue for the exemption. That's an actual registration requirement. So there's pros and cons to both. I appreciate having them. But again, if you have very good course description information, that is a substitute.
Great, thank you. So I'm back in MNSAS. I did have to refresh my screen. So again, just appreciating your patience if there are little glitches like that. But what we can see is I'm back on my dashboard. Application status shows not yet submitted. So what I was talking about before, this gray box is going to stay gray until each of the sections are complete. But what I can also review now too is now I have two registration applications. I have that one from before and I have the renewal that I'm working on now. So that's what that drop down box will look like for you. So I'm going to go back, making sure that each of the sections are now marked as complete. The last to be marked complete are my programs. So if you're adding a program and you have a program saved in draft, you can still complete this section. You don't have to wait until all your programs are complete. You can go back and do that at any point. If you're doing the renewal application, just submit the renewal application and then come back at another time and continue working on your programs. One thing I wanted to point out, this archive documents link. If you want copies of your approval letters, you click on the archive documents and all of your historical approval letters from OHE will show up there and you can print them out. If you have any trouble with that, of course, let us know, but that should be a quick and easy way to get access to those letters. So now if I scroll back up to the top, I see my submit application button is now green. So I can go ahead and get that submitted. It's going to kick it then into OHE's queue. But before I do that, I wanted to make sure, does anybody have any questions? You want me to review any specific section of the application that you might want to review? Feel free to take yourself off mute if.
Hi, this is Beth Peter at Concordia in St. Paul. just a quick question. How far ahead of the renewal date can we open the application?
You can open it, yeah. It should be available as soon as your current year's application is approved. You can start working on it right away. It'll show you what your renewal date is.
Right.
And then I believe notifications are sent by our office. Is it 90 days in advance of the renewal date, Betsy?
Should be.
Sometimes
you guys get some free. Yeah, sometimes you guys get some free extensions because I didn't get those notifications out, or like this year where it was just I didn't want anyone in there doing them until we had worked out a couple more bugs. So that's why the notices got out so late. Now, the pros and cons to this is pros, you can enter it, as soon as it's been approved. Con, you can't open the next one until your current one's been approved. So if we're behind, that can put you behind if you had calendared it and had reserved time. So that is something to be aware of as we work through some of these issues that have occurred. Like we had to pause for a couple of weeks, like we could not process any applications due to an issue with a new requirement that we had set up built into the system for document review purposes. And so these kinks are happening, unfortunately.
All right, so I'm going to click submit application and it's been submitted. So now this application status at the top will show that it's been submitted. You can still go into each of these and submit changes. You can't, ones that are listed, I think is pending review, though I don't think you can edit those while they're in our queue. So what happens now is they've been forwarded on to OHE. So they'll start in the initial payment section. So as soon as you submit your application, you're going to get an email that says OHE has received your renewal application, and it's going to provide you with information on making the payment for the renewal fee. So the renewal fee currently is $1,500. You can either mail a check to our office, or a link will be provided where you can make a payment via our online portal. The application doesn't move forward until that payment is received. So generally, I will follow up with an email to you as well, just reminding you of it, as we're all still getting used to MNSAS. It's just an extra step to make sure the right people got the right notifications and you don't have any questions about submitting that fee. As soon as the fee is paid or confirmation of the payment has been received, then it goes to Brian. Brian completes his initial review. When he's done, he kicks it to me. When I'm done, I kick it to Betsy for her final review. But at any point in that workflow, any of the three of us can revert it back to you. So we're learning a little bit about the reverted process on our end, in that we being specifically me, I've been making comments within each of the tiles of the application, and it doesn't tell you where to look. So we apologize for that oversight. Again, that's part of, we can't really see what you see. So we thought when we created the system that we sort of work that out, but we didn't. So we are going to do a better job of making sure when you log back in, you're going to get better notification about what we need and where to find those things. So Betsy, are you working to revert it back to me? You're on mute. Sorry. I probably muted you.
No, it was me. Because I don't need to, I could have a child walk in at any time. It's already reverted and I have added comments. So you might have to refresh.
Yeah. So what we want to do is show you what it's going to look like. So now you see if I log in up at the top here, instead of submitted, it says reverted. So it's back with me and I should be able to, well, it's not working. I thought, am I wrong, Betsy, or do I have to just open the institution details?
Yep.
Got it. So I'm sorry, I'm going to go back. I apologize. So what you want to do is open this first tile, institutional details, when the application is reverted back to you. You can scroll down and you will eventually see a red line. This red line is going to include the comments from OHE, whether it be Betsy, myself, or Brian. We'll put a note in here to say, this is the section that we have a question on. And then I'll know to go back to my dashboard. Go to the affidavit piece, and then she's included better notes. So again, that was an issue on our part that we are working to fix, so it's not as confusing for you guys. But if you do get an application reverted and you're not sure what the questions are, please feel free to reach out to us, and we'll work together to fix it. So now assume,
yeah,
I'm sorry, Betsy,
okay,
go ahead.
I was just saying, it's going to be somewhere in that institutional details. The issue is why it's so far down. That's the first spot in my screen that I can put feedback in. So like, because that database is pulling that intro part is pulling from a different section in the database, it's not where I can add feedback. So sorry that it's so far down, but until we come up with a change order to fix that, so you guys have better notification, you'll have to check the institutional details and it will tell you which tile needs, if it's not that first institutional details, which tile to click on.
Awesome, thanks. So then let's assume I have mailed the original affidavit to the office or made the changes per the notes from OHE. I'm going to click update changes. It's going to be back and I'm going to submit it again. So anytime it's in reverted status, we can't see it until you submit it back to us. That's one of the more common questions that we get. So I hit submit application, it's back into submitted mode. It's going to keep working through that OHE workflow. So keep in mind, it could be reverted multiple times depending on which of us is looking at your application. Each of us have different roles and tasks within the application that we review. So that's the reason for potentially the multiple reversions. And
I was going to add that if you're done saving your changes and that green button doesn't show up, you might have to go through and mark the other sections as complete again. That is your like that. We know that if that is not green, it's because something has not been marked complete, even if it's a section you didn't touch previously. So it's just something to keep in mind.
Right. So then as soon as, oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry, this is Mario from Capella. I just had a question, and you might have covered this already on Tuesday, but in that instance you just showed, there's really nowhere for me to tell you that, yes, we've already mailed it to you, or it's in the mail now, no narrative box. Is that something in those instances that's going to be added in the future, instead of us just emailing you separately, or do we just continue to email you?
The goal of the system is that once it has been mailed, that's when you hit submit. Like a form of like nonverbal communication, I would call it as, is that's when you'll hit submit. Is like, you know, it's off in the mail, you just mailed it, or you're concerned because you mailed it 3 weeks ago and you will have to email us outside of the system. And that's okay, because that's going to kind of crowd out the record of your file in our side, because our side keeps a record of all of the feedback even after we delete it out from the side that you can see. So for the most part, if there was a task that we wanted you to do, even if it's not something that is something you would type out in the system, once you've done that task is when you would submit it. We have a different tracking mechanism now for the affidavit, so it won't typically be something like originals. It would typically be for something else.
Great, thank you.
All right, that's Betsy. Do you want to do anything further with this test one, or
Well, I mean, we
I
can
thought
talk
there were some license or those additional requirements. Do you want to?
correct. So we
some-
have, I'll put one on for this institution. So see down below, Mario, we were just talking about this. That registration requirement, submit paper documents, that's also where you would communicate with us that that's been done, where you would click on that. So click on view, Kate, for that one. That registration requirement is like a secondary reminder that you need to do this specific task. And one of the ways you will know that we have received your original documents is that we'll process this. So Kate, can you hit submit on that one?
Oh, sure. I can show you too on my this current year's one what it looks like also.
Well, it wouldn't have been from the prior year because it was so new. So
I
there,
just created it though.
Okay. So there it says submit paper documents. It's pending approval, and then I'll be able to go in.
Let me show you what it looks like. So this is like my initial application once it switches here. And if I scroll down to that section, I can see that it was approved.
Yep. That's how you
yesterday.
know that we've gotten them, we like them, and they're good to go. So they'll be marked as approved. And so we made the decision to create that specific workflow for paper documents because Brian was unable to move the application into its full review kind of stages until that was done. And that was slowing down Kate from being able to do like the in-depth analysis on marketing and advertising materials. And so we would prefer the application to be stuck in those queues, not in an earlier stage. So that way we can kind of expedite it. It's not expediting, it's making it more efficient so that the first queue, which is more, yes, these things are submitted, we have them, payments in. Once we have that stage done, it's not being held up by things that are in the mail or that have to be processed in the mail, especially if you think about, if we have another pandemic, crossing our fingers, knock on wood, that we don't. But if we're having problems with being able to get into the office and process mail, then the rest of the application can continue until it goes right. The impact on our end is we literally cannot approve the application until that requirement is marked as approved. There's a block. I cannot approve it. It cannot flip over until those are in.
That makes it very clear. Thank you.
Betsy, did you want to add any special requirements for my school or do you want to talk about, I know on Tuesday you shared your screen to show.
Yep, I can share my screen real quick because I
Sure.
already have that up. Making sure I save the right one. This is another one of Kate's test schools, but this is in the development environment. There are times where we will add very specific requirements to your institution. They could be based on financials. They could be based on accreditation. They could be based on, you need approval from the city for your new location. We will add those specific requirements and they'll be right when you log in. And you will get an email about them and telling you to log into the portal to review these additional requirements. They are a component of staying in good standing, so it's very important to check the due dates. We have, those due dates are important sometimes, and they're going to auto populate for you. So sometimes it's going to be a one-time report if an event happens. You don't ever have to click and clear that requirement or do anything with that requirement until that event occurs. So you don't need to check in with me and say, nope, this event hasn't occurred. We're like, yep, nope, keep the requirement there. That's the only time you're going to submit is that one time where you've had to draw on your letter of credit. That is specifically what we're asking for, and that event occurred. So then you would report on that, hit submit for that specific requirement. Or it could be something like this one, like we want you to schedule a meeting. You're going to click on it. And you're going to acknowledge that you need to do this and that you've made a phone call or an email to schedule that appointment with us. They're very different from each other. They're ad hoc. We create them as we need them. And when I said that they will be automatic, the other requirement was quarterly. So the moment that this is approved, the next one will show up with the next due date because it's quarterly. And I set an end date for that requirement. So maybe in the next calendar year, we're going to want these quarterly updates. So it'll auto-populate. What we have noticed is that our office is not the best at reviewing the monthly ones on a timely basis, and you cannot submit the next monthly report until the prior monthly report has been submitted. So we do apologize that we're working on that. But mostly we've been trying to find workarounds to make it easier for us to communicate with you without having to send emails, keeping it within the database. But we do acknowledge that there are some issues that we haven't provided you good spaces to provide feedback to us when there's an issue, other than using the text boxes within the submissions, where you're supposed to be putting in information about a question as opposed to trying to get clarifying information. But you can do that, and that's fine because we can provide you that feedback back to you within that database. It'll show up as that red line, and then you can delete out that information and update as needed. And we will then delete out our red comments. I know that's a lot of words without being able to show you a picture. Any questions on additional requirements and what these look like? Some of the questions that we've gotten on the side is that if things are expired, they can stay in there. They don't need to be deleted. They don't need to be deactivated. I can always deactivate the expired ones if we don't want them showing up anymore. So let us know. And then for things that need to be essentially deleted from the database because you've completed the teach out, we were supposed to delete these out or they were deleted out in the prior database. The easiest thing is just to email us a list and we'll deactivate them manually. And then you won't have to make any changes within the system. This time we're getting done faster. I kind of like it. Any questions? For us, feel free to unmute. Or if there's specific things you'd like us to talk about with the program applications for the next training. So Christine, if there are multiple documents to submit for one question, is it because the document upload only allows for one? Or
it seems to be only allowing for one document?
I would recommend trying a zip file because we can download the zip files and then open them that way.
I just made it all into one PDF and that was fine, but it just was different than how it used to be.
Let us know which field that is because that might be a relatively easy fix.
Or the financial aid documents, for instance, that you have to have your participation agreement and all that.
Do you normally have more than one participation agreement?
we had like 5 of them that we submit.
5?
It might be overkill, but we just submit everything that we've gotten
to the feds for your PPA. Should be just
no, it's this isn't my area. I just submit what I ask the financial aid director for.
They might be over giving you documents. This might be why I'm so confused.
Yeah, I'll talk to Kate and then we'll see what I might be, but then it's not clear to me which document you want. So
typically just your participation agreement. So some institutions are on temporary provisional participation agreements. There are just provisional participation agreements, or you just have your standard. Typically, if there's not a lot going on with your institution, you get one like every 7 years. It's not They're not,
Correct. Right.
they're
right,
not very
right.
exciting. So it's just when there's lots of changes, but there are different prompts and questions if you are on an LOC, like in the rare, you know what I'm talking about? Like there are other documents that are requested in those cases, but those are different questions, not specifically for that one. So I'm not sure. Well, I'll take a look. I don't know. Any other questions? But if there are those fields and you feel like we should be allowing multiple uploads, let us know, because those users are using it differently than we would have expected. Does not mean that you're wrong. It means that we were wrong. And therefore we need to add that to my list of change orders, which continues to grow. And we already have one listed to be able to have a PDF of your application, which would be particularly useful if you are trying to have like a president not have to log into this system and click on all these tiles and get confused. We're working on that. So perfect. Christina, you have a question.
Thank you. Yes, I was just going to say I ran into that same issue with not being able to upload multiple documents. So I just put them all in one PDF. And that was with the program accrediting bodies. So for instance, we get like 3 nursing letters for 3 different, programs. It's one accrediting body. So I just had to merge them in. That happened a couple times, but easy fix, but I just couldn't upload multiple documents.
So yeah, if we get a list of those fields where we're not providing you guys the right tools, send me that, like, hey, it's this question on this application, because I will add that to the list of things that we need to request for a change order. We're at that stage of the database that anytime I need to make a substantive change that has a cost associated with it, it's not just maintenance. I have to do a purchase request and get executive leadership, like the commissioner, to approve spending the money. So then I have to be like, no, my institutions are requesting this. We're trying to make this application better and more user friendly. And it's expensive. Like, I want to change the approval letter to list the name of your location as opposed to the first part of the address of the location. And that would cost $10,000 to make that change.
Wow. Wow.
I know. I feel like I went to the wrong field.
Thank you.
So we're working on those things. Any other questions? Otherwise, you can have 7 minutes back, and you always feel free to email Kate and I. We recognize that we're imperfect in creating this system and that we do have to make adjustments based on how users interact with it. So we like that feedback, and we actually do try to do those things. So perfect. Hopefully we'll see you guys at the end of the month, because I'll be gone for the next 2 weeks. So please be patient with Kate and Brian. There's only so much they can do that I am gone having adventures. So with that, we'll see you guys in a couple of weeks.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.